So we were at our second stop. We're gonna be going to actually do the delivery once you guys get wrapped up with this. But I wanted to ask you, because you're kind of the brains behind getting all these farms started, take us through a little bit about how you actually get the plants up and running. They're actually not potted plants or anything like that. They actually start from seed. So tell us how you're gonna get it started, and then kind of walk us through the process of you see a plot of land and what that entails.
Okay, well, I believe that we should start from the very beginning, which is when a homeowner registers their home online. I basically, when we're ready to expand, which we are right now at 16 plots, and because I'm connecting with more vendors, I want to expand to 25 plots by the end of summer. So I'm going online, where we have over 300 inquiries just in Audubon Park and in this area. And what I'm doing is I'm going on our map online and looking at each of the properties that are registered and checking via Google Map if it's getting enough sunlight, if it's the right size, their front lawns, and then I hand pick which lawns I want to go to, and I contact the homeowners. I will do a site survey. I'll ask them where their faucet setup outside is. I'll kind of see if it makes sense, and usually in this area, a lot of people, there's just large open lawns that are relatively close to a faucet, so they're like perfect. They get roughly 6 hours of sun. And then from that point, we solarize. Once they've signed a homeowner's agreement and they paid the $500 startup fee, we begin the process by laying down a large black tarp and solarizing, which means that the sun is really, really hot, and underneath there we're killing all of the roots of all the grass, so that in roughly 6 weeks, when we lift up the tarp, we can just take our tiller and till that soil really deep down to get some oxygen into the soil. Then we have a compost drop, and together, usually with the swarm, we'll build our rows and then we'll seed. But before we seed, we have to set up the irrigation. Really easy. You just get a splitter for your faucet, and then on one side you have your everyday hose with a little knob that turns on and off whenever the homeowner wants to use their hose. And on this other side we connect a timer, and we set our timer for twice a day at 6 a.m. and 12 hours later for just 10-15 minutes. Depending on whether it's a seedling. Once they're fully established, it goes down to just once a day watering. Then we do a black tubing connected to that that we puncture and add our drip line irrigation via a connector tube, and that is what goes down every 4 inches, supplying a little bit of water every day. And all the homeowners say that it just adds about $1 to their monthly water bill, so it's barely anything at all, and yet you get to give just enough water and nourishment to these plants so that they can grow. Fleet just started our compost program because it just makes sense. Eventually we want to grow and add different techniques, and I'm meeting with professionals in this area to teach me a little bit more about how to keep up production of compost. But right now, just because we have so much excess when we turn over plots and our greens are too bitter and we need to throw them away, we don't want to contribute to the waste that goes into the landfill. We want to turn it into really awesome, rich compost. So right now my hobby is building things out of pallets. So I went around on Labor Day and found these pallets, and I've just been building them into different germination stations, greenhouses, and compost bins. This right here, we're just basically taking our scraps. As far as I know, it's really nice to mix some dry, dead plant matter like leaves and roots with the wet, raw material straight out of your kitchen. So coffee grinds are awesome. Any scraps from our from harvesting, let's say aphids came and attacked some of our Siberian kale, for example. I don't want to spray that if it's on its third harvest and it's already going to be a little bit too bitter to sell at the market anyway. So what I would do in order to combat the aphids is just rip everything out, throw it in the compost bin, and wait a week before I reseed. So it's a win-win ultimately. It's a way to get around using any type of pest deterrents, and it's also a way to help enrich our future compost.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about how you got started with fleet farming and how where your interest in farming came from, because there's a lot of, it's a lot of hard work, but there's also like a science component to this.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Massachusetts, and my mom, it's all in our family. We've always just grown things throughout my childhood. I've always been outside. I've always had my hands in the dirt since I was a little girl. However, in Massachusetts, you can put a seed in the ground and it grows. You can grow corn, you can grow tomatoes, you can grow things without the same challenges that we face. The only compromise is that they have a longer winter season where nothing is fertile. So here we have the challenge of sugar sand, climate, crazy days of rain and flooding, crazy days of extreme heat and sun damage to our crops. So there is a science that goes behind farming, and a lot of people in our area, they don't want to deal with that, so they don't farm on their own lawns because it's a lot of work. The thing that's awesome about Fleet is that together, as a collective movement with the community, you can get a lot done. If you plan it out, you can do a huge farmlet in just a couple hours if everyone pitches in a little bit of labor. So that's one way that we can combat the hazards of working in Florida sun, is if you do a little bit all at once from everybody in the community. So some of the techniques that we're going to be experimenting with, helping grow your soil. So I've been meeting with Wayne Nelson. He's a professional on biochar. He did a TED Talk a few years back about how some places in Africa use biochar in order to boost their soil. And basically what that is, it's just a wood charcoal that you make out of building your own little kiln. That instead of releasing all of that carbon into the atmosphere, it basically is a slow burning method to condense the wood into like a really carbon rich component. And what that does, it's a very porous material that will absorb nutrients. So if you were to put it on your crops, just plain biochar, it would kill everything because it would suck up all the nutrients. But if you soak it in some type of natural organic fertilizer like fish emulsion for a week, and you let it absorb all that really good nutrients, when you lay it on your soil, it becomes like a time release capsule that over time, it holds the nutrients like a sponge, and it allows your crops to slowly take from that. So that's one way that we're trying to combat this sugar sand that doesn't hold nutrients very well. Yeah, so.
And it's interesting though too, because, and that's probably why when people decide to start their own garden in their house, at their home, or whether it's fruits, vegetables, or even flowers, why at some point they're like, I just give up, I can't get the soil right, or they buy soil to kind of get it started, but they're not exactly sure what the chemistry of the soil they already have in their yard, plus whatever they're introducing in the yard to kind of like create something where it's like lush and you can kind of get the results.
Yes, so the technique that we started Fleet Farming on was buying mass amounts of mushroom compost from Monterey Mushroom. It's located out in Zellwood, which is 45 minutes from here. And we're noticing that just adding a thick layer of compost gets us by for that season, but we're having to constantly add more and more nutrients to the soil in order to keep the quality of the soil lasting from season to season. So now Fleet is going back in our technique and trying to work out the kinks so that when we do franchise, we can answer the questions that other states might have when it comes to how can I grow in the soil that isn't very fertile.